Hey nerds, what's up? So there's been this joke going around for a while about Brandon writing a lot and Rothfuss and Martin having a hard time writing, and maybe Sanderson should just finish their books. And while most of the time this is kind of done in a joking manner with some memes that are pretty funny, recently there has been a resurgence of a serious thread of the fandom who really wants this to happen. And while this has been said for several years now, I feel like because of the Kickstarter and Sanderson's 4 surprise novels, we've seen a big resurgence in that seriousness. So today I just want to put it out there about why I don't think it actually makes sense for Sanderson to ever finish the Kingkiller Chronicles or Game of Thrones, why I think it can be kind of disrespectful when fans talk about this, and our history or precedent of books being finished by other authors in the past. See you after the jump. Honestly, perhaps most famously of books being finished by other authors is Sanderson with The Wheel of Time, which is why we're here, honestly, I think. I've been in the Wheel of Time fandom for a while, so I feel like I kind of have a beat on how the fandom feels about Sanderson finishing the books. Obviously, everybody would have liked Jordan to be able to finish the books, but I think most people really appreciate the work that Sanderson did, even if in some cases it wasn't quite what they expected. Even Sanderson himself has said that he didn't feel like he wrote Matt in particular very well, but I think we're all grateful that instead of reading a pile of notes, we got to see that series finish, and I think we respect what Sanderson did pretty well. Some other famous SFF stuff that has been published posthumously would be J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion and his translation of Beowulf. Now, I was actually really surprised to find this. I know some of his stuff had been published posthumously, but I did not realize The Silmarillion was one of them, just because that one is so widely respected. Now, his son is the one who published those posthumously, and it does seem that he mostly just compiled and edited them, and there wasn't as much writing involved, although he did get help from a fantasy writer whose name is slipping my mind. I will put it up here on screen. It seems that most people respect the work that Tolkien's son has done, and it's important to note that Tolkien's son has not allowed any other sort of franchises or any other sort of writing to be done in the Lord of the Rings world, and he's kept a pretty tight lid on that, and it seems only publishing things that Tolkien himself at least had partially written. There's also Dune and the later Dune novels written by Herbert's son. Now, I think he wrote like 6 novels, and 2 of them were maybe finishing up the main Dune series. I've only read the first Dune book so far, so I'm not like super well versed, but basically on my research, it seems that the fandom is very divided on Brian Herbert's contributions to Dune, but it mostly seems towards the negative. They feel like his works lacked the nuance and the literary value of the original Dune, and it seems that people don't really love them. Notice that in these 3 famous examples, 2 of them were done by relatives of the authors, and I'm unsure if they were given permission to do so. I'm not quite sure. So there's kind of a different precedent there than with Sanderson and Wheel of Time, where he was specifically asked to do it, and even though Jordan's wife is the one who asked Sanderson, it seems that Jordan was preparing for someone else to finish his series, as he was taking copious notes as if to pass it on to somebody. Some other smaller examples would be the 6th book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This one's a little different because the author died partway through writing the 6th book, and they just published the unfinished manuscript as, you know, a thing for fans, and they didn't attempt to finish it or alter it in any way. Now, after I finished this video, I actually came across new information. So it seems like at the time they published this unfinished work, but now from what I can tell, they had Ian Colfer actually write more in that world, or finish it off, or write some extra things in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So there is some extra posthumous work that seems to have been done with this series. There's also the Millennium series, which more people might know from the title of its first book, which is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. In this case, it seems like another situation of lack of permission, as the author died partway through writing the 4th book, and another author took over to write more books in that series, but did not have the other works of the author. It seems that the estate, the author's sister, did not allow them to have access to the previously written works or notes. So that seems like it may have been done without permission. These are the most famous examples of books I could find in our sphere. There are other examples, but they tend to be with longer serials where it's a little easier perhaps for another author to step in, since it's not like a tightly plotted story. I think this history is important just to look at because it shows us that there is this sort of trepid and controversial past when it comes to finishing others' authors' works, especially posthumously. And it should be noted that in all of these cases, it was finished after the author's death. that I think is an important element when we talk about things later. Honestly, of all the examples I found, it almost feels like Sanderson's is the least controversial with full permission, obviously followed by Tolkien's, which also seems to be pretty well received. Okay, so let's talk about it. Should Sanderson finish Martin and Rothfuss's work? Now, I need to clarify that I cite Sanderson as my favorite author. So what I'm about to say is nothing about Brandon Sanderson's skill as a writer. I think he's an incredible author and does incredible things with stories and world building, and there's a reason he's my favorite. So this has nothing to do with him personally. But Sanderson had a unique set of skills when it comes to finishing The Wheel of Time. I'm not saying Jordan and Sanderson's prose are necessarily super similar, but I would say the biggest focus of Wheel of Time is not its prose, but rather its high fantasy, epic nature with detailed magic systems. And when we talk about things like that, that's Sanderson. He does detailed magic systems with giant, epic, high fantasy worlds. So he had the skills there that were compatible enough to be able to finish The Wheel of Time. And this unique situation just is not there for either Game of Thrones or Kingkiller Chronicle. Let's start with the Game of Thrones. Now, admittedly, I have not read the Game of Thrones, but I feel like I know a decent amount of it. And what I know about it is that it is a dark, grim fantasy. It's considered grimdark. It's very flawed characters that do really bad things, and it's sad, and it's just not Sanderson's MO, okay? And Sanderson has even talked about that. His stories are filled with hope, and he probably would not enjoy writing dark things. Now, could he? Maybe. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like something that he would enjoy or even want to do or really be capable of doing, since it's against his strengths. And way more important than everything I just said, Martin has specifically stated on numerous occasions that he does never, ever wants anybody to touch Game of Thrones other than him. He does not want people writing in that world. He does not like even fan fiction about that world. And he has specifically stated he does not want anyone to finish the series, even if he passes away. Martin has said, "I don't think my wife, if she survives me, will allow that either. But one thing that history has shown us is eventually these literary rights pass to grandchildren or collateral descendants, or people who didn't actually know the writer and don't care about his wishes. It's just a cash cow to them. And then we get abominations to my mind like Scarlet, the Gone with the Wind sequel." He has gone on to say what I said previously about Not While I'm Alive. He thinks most of the things are abomination. In fact, he specifically cites that he thinks what Tolkien's son has done is pretty respectful and great, but otherwise he does not pretty much like anybody finishing things posthumously. It would be expressly against Martin's wishes. And if we go to Rothfuss and Kingkiller Chronicles, Sanderson and Rothfuss's writing styles are just completely different. Sanderson has stated on multiple occasions that he prefers a very straightforward writing style to make his works accessible and to bring more focus to his world building and characters and stories, which is the part that he likes the most. Whereas we have Rothfuss, who sometimes agonizes over single sentences. The whole purpose of his stories are the prose and the poetry and the lyrical nature of his writing. You don't necessarily read Kingkiller Chronicles just for the plot alone. It's not like the plot is so unique. It is the way that it is written that makes the Kingkiller Chronicles interesting. It doesn't really feel like Sanderson would be the author suited to finish that series, even if Rothfuss wanted it. But everything I just said actually doesn't matter. And you know why? Because does anyone else feel like it's a tad gross and macabre to act like these authors are somehow on death's door, or that they'll never finish something in their lifetime? It feels extremely creepy to me to be asking constantly for Sanderson to finish these novels while the authors are both very much alive. George R.R. Martin is 73, and without any health conditions that I'm aware of, probably has quite a few years left. Like 73 might sound older in age, but with life expectancies these days, he has plenty of time left, most likely. And then let's get to Rothfuss, who is only 2 years older than Sanderson at 48 years old. He's got almost half a lifetime left. Like, I get it, as fans, we're sick of waiting. Again, every other example of this being done, it was done post-humorously. We simply don't have the antidote to back up this idea of an author finishing another author's work while they're still alive. And also, can we please stop asking Sanderson, "Hey, do you want to finish the Game of Thrones? Do you want to finish Kingkiller Chronicle?" I can tell it makes him super uncomfortable, and it should, because it's weird. So please stop saying this directly to authors too. Now that we've moved past that, it did lead me to an interesting question though about, would you prefer something to be poorly finished versus unfinished? I was thinking a little bit about The Wheel of Time. Now, I don't think The Wheel of Time was poorly finished in any way. I think Sanderson did a great job. But I had this kind of thought, we did recently have a fake health scare with Sanderson where many of us thought that he might die before he finishes the Stormlight Archive. It turned out to be a joke, thank goodness. But it did get me thinking, if that happened and the 10th Stormlight book wasn't out, would I rather just read Sanderson's notes, or would I rather an imperfect version be published just so I could get the experience of reading it? And in my mind, I'd rather the imperfect version be published. I know it wouldn't be as good as Sanderson doing it. I would know that going in, and I'm sure a lot of longtime Wheel of Time fans who had been fans since the first book was published in the 90s felt that way. But I'm sure they were also grateful they got to read something. And it just made me think about our relationship with post-humorous publications, and I was curious about your guys' thoughts on that. Would you rather it be unfinished if we could never see the original author's work, or would you rather an imperfect version be given if possible? But that also led me to think about these issues with Martin and Rothfuss. You know, do some of us want to tell them we'd rather your works be published even if they're not perfect, we just want to read what you have? Of course, there was always going to be a pocket who was going to completely destroy them if it doesn't live up to their expectations, and I can't imagine what kind of pressure that is. But I did think these were kind of interesting thought experiments, and I would love to know what you think about them. So please let me know what you guys think about this weird trend for people asking Sanderson to finish other people's works. I think it's inappropriate and sort of weird, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, if they differ or if you agree. As well, I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you think about finished versus unfinished in those thought experiments. And as always, if you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.